This is Esther Lin for MMAfighting.com, and I wanted to share some of my favorite images from UFC Fight Night 27 and UFC 164. It's fight night. I flew into Indy just in time for the fights, and I'm glad I was ready because they started with a bang. Here's Brandon Thatch making an impressive UFC debut by smashing his knee into Justin Edwards' chin and ending this fight in the first round. Here, Eric Perez fights Takeya Mizugaki, who sends the young fighter back to the drawing board with his experience and sharper striking. I felt that Perez showed great heart despite never really putting Mizugaki in danger, and still think he's a good prospect. But Mizugaki's boxing looked wonderful, giving me this glorious moment where blood is being punched out of Perez's face. In the first round, Cowboy Cerrone is blindsided by Rafael dos Anjos' right hand, knocked down, and I feel like he never really comes back from that attack until the end of the third round when the fog finally lifts. I wasn't previously excited for this main event. I liked the fight solely because Martin Kampmann and Carlos Condit are two of my favorite fighters to watch. But here, when Condit does a customary circle in the cage and runs by Kampmann, the two look at each other with such malice. Condit's eyes narrowing before returning to his corner for the start. It riled me up too, hooked me. I knew this was going to be great. Condit looked sharper than ever as he weathered the first round calmly and then proceeded to take apart Kampmann with a vicious precision. If you look closely, blood is squirting out from Kampmann's face at the points of impact. Kampmann sits against the cage, defeated but awake, aware of all the pain and loss, unlike being knocked out. Kampmann is here, processing this fight as the blood drains from the cut between his brows. Fans behind him applaud the fight. We all watch as Condit stalks victorious around the octagon, then retreat for the night as another fight week begins. Now we're in Milwaukee for UFC 164. After a lifetime of seeing Americans get random Asian characters tattooed on them, now we're finally seeing Asian people get random English words tattooed on them. I gotta say, macho is definitely a silly tattoo to get on your abdomen, but certainly no sillier than the Chinese character for strength or honor on your arm. I'm not hating at all, my people have a beautiful written language. And who would think such a happy guy could be such a killer the next night? Clay Guida has a bit of fun at the weigh-ins, measuring Chad Mendes' biceps, and gives a thumbs up and approval, amusing the crowd, Mendes, and Dana White. On to fight night. After tumbling into some quick starts, we had Saul Palele versus Nikita Krylov, and the pace slowed considerably. Palele revealed in the post-fight interview he had broken his rib last week, but didn't want to pull out of the fight. While understandable, it didn't make it any easier to bear over 11 minutes of exhausted heavyweights. While terrible, the fight was amusing in its own dreadful way. This is just a fun image. Chico Camus leaps over Kang's legs to deliver a punch. This photo isn't particularly indicative of the fight, but I'd say it's pretty accurate to Camus's personality. After 15 minutes of fantastic action, Eric Koch and Dustin Poirier kneel on the canvas, tired, but they had to have been satisfied with how they fought. I was surprised this fight didn't win Fight of the Night. I felt that Lim vs. Krause was too one-sided to be Fight of the Night, while the first round of Koch vs. Poirier shifted back and forth and left my heart racing. Clay Guida's fights are hard to photograph because his hair gets in the way. The punch face is obscured by curls propelled forward by Guida's head launched backwards by Mendes' fist. Then, in the finishing sequence, I get a lucky break. The split second after Guida is rocked, he falls back, Mendes' eyes locked on Guida's swollen face as his right hook follows through. Mendes knows this fight is ready to end. That punch landing made a ridiculous sound. I can't even describe it. While I'm a fan of all genres, I love the louder disciplines in particular, and it was a real treat to hear English metal legends Bolt Thrower in the arena that night. Josh Barnett's a real showman, and I loved his death stare as he ascends into the cage, that red light glowing perfectly behind his head as he imagines the impending violence. Within minutes, Barnett's job was done. While I thought the stop was early, I'm confident Barnett would have continued to dominate Mir, though I prefer to give the fighters that opportunity. From my days at Strikeforce and my visits to Japan, it was nice to see the throat slash here in the UFC. And as I said earlier, ever the showman, Barnett spotted the row of photographers waiting for him as he exited and posed for us. I had a bad angle on the fight. It essentially finished where I could barely see through the cage, and it was honestly too short of a fight to get a few good punch faces. But this makes up for it. Finally, the main event. Pettis stuffs a few takedown attempts by Benson Henderson, waiting a few out and even checking his watch. Then, Pettis fires off hard body kicks, each of which made a brutal, deep, resonating sound and made Henderson's body twitch. The crowd went wild each time a body kick landed, but here, as Pettis locked in the armbar, the crowd quietly waited. Honestly, if you weren't underneath them, you probably couldn't see the gorgeous submission finish. Henderson stood up, Pettis celebrated, and the arena was still hushed. Then it erupted. The boom reminded me of a shockwave after you see an explosion. The image happens first, then the sound reaches your ears. In this case, the roar of proud Milwaukee fans. Blue lights circled the arena as the new lightweight champion Anthony Pettis climbed the cage to share his accomplishment with the crowd. Henderson looks on. I can only speculate as to what expression he wore, what Henderson might have been thinking as he walked toward the man who just took his title for the second time, perched on the fence. I'm such a softie. As the interviews finished and the champ filed out of the octagon with his teammates, Pettis embraced his mother and they cried together while a dozen cameras waited for him to turn around. My eyes welled up with each muffled sob. What joy and pain, all at once flooding after this amazing achievement. Always beautiful to see fighters show gratitude for the people who truly made this moment possible. Pettis donned a slick suit at the post-fight press conference, complete with tie clip. I've said it so many times before, but I always appreciate a fighter who cares about his appearance. As the presser ended, he obliged media requests for him to pose with the belt. I was on the other side of the room, furiously uploading photos, and I darted through the chairs trying to get to the dais before Pettis left. I finally pushed my way in. Pettis was about to leave, but posed again, happy to squeeze in another photo. There is something confident and proud, but not vain, about Showtime. This is Esther Lin for MMAfighting.com. Thanks for watching. See you in Toronto.